I'm going to be discussing the case of Verizon versus Sprint in regards to Paul Marcarelli, who I'm sure you've seen before. I'm sure you've seen this guy on the billboard on the corner of 12th and Wedgwood, as he is the new spokesperson for Sprint. First, let me give you a quick overview of what I'm referring to. According to the Fast Company, Paul Marcarelli had worked for Verizon as their spokesperson for almost 10 years, from 2002 to 2011, when their contract ended mutually on the terms that Verizon needed a new campaign and Paul wanted to brand himself more broadly. This past summer, Marcarelli was seen wearing a yellow shirt promoting the competitor Sprint of his previous employer, Verizon. Let me just show you a quick clip of the commercial that kind of flipped the cell phone world upside down.
Hey, I'm Paul. I used to ask if you could hear me now with Verizon. Not anymore. I'm with Sprint now. Because guess what? It's 2016 and every network is Sprint. In fact, Sprint's reliability is now within 1% of Verizon. And Sprint saves you 50% on most Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile rates. So I switched to Sprint. And millions more have too. Can you hear that?
Don't let a 1% difference cost you twice as much. Switch to Sprint today.
Sprint's Vice President of Communications, David Tovar, said that he had reached out to Marcarelli to see if he'd be interested in trying out their services and joining their campaign. After Marcarelli tried Sprint, he liked it and hopped on board. Tovar said that Sprint had made so much progress in the last couple of years and viewed this campaign as a bold way to demonstrate that. In their commercials and ads, Paul wears a yellow version of his red shirt from Verizon and compares the two services or sells his viewers on Sprint. According to ethicsalarms.com, which is a website that questions whether or not certain things that happen in the media, etc., are ethical or not, they say that it wasn't unethical for Paul to do what he did in the Verizon commercials. He was playing a character, and in the Sprint commercials, he was simply playing himself. On the other hand, they argued that Sprint was unethical in hiring him to portray his switch as being because Verizon was so horrible and he had no choice but to turn to Sprint. Now that we've looked at an opinion on the ethical standing of this case, let's look at a few different ethical concepts to guide it. What does Aristotle's golden mean? In an article entitled Why Communication Matters, Aristotle had wrestled with the idea of ethics in communication and trying to find the balance between excess and bareness. For example, he pondered if it was ever okay to lie, what if the situation was life or death? Could you benefit from lying? As public relations practitioners, should we be absolutists in telling the truth, even if that truth doesn't shine a positive light on our organization? According to a website called Ethics in Public Relations, the golden mean refers to virtue being the state of excess and deficiency. This is to be interpreted widely and to be applied to things as simple as eating too much or too little and finding that perfect balance. According to the book Public Relations Writing Principles and Practice, the golden mean is an average of meeting between two extreme opposites. As a professional in public relations, we could apply this in the situation of revealing everything to a client when they ask, or saying nothing at all. Now let's look at Kant's categorical imperative. According to the book PR Writing Principles and Practice, they say that this idea means what is right for one is right for all. It is all about being clear in your decision making and understanding the consequences. For example, this book says that if you were going to launch an attack ad on your competitor, which is an ironic example, it is just and expected that they will do the same to you and that you should accept that. According to the website Ethics in Public Relations, this is a moral absolute. There is no spectrum, no gray area. You decide and then you stick to that decision. Now let's use these concepts as a lens to look at the Verizon Sprint conflict that I talked about a few minutes ago. So, according to the golden mean, Sprint could have handled the situation much differently. Right now, on Aristotle's spectrum, Sprint is hanging in the excess zone. So on this example that I have on the PowerPoint, they'd be where all those rocks are, weighing it out way too heavy. They're putting all their energy in showing the world that Sprint is better than Verizon, and using one spokesperson that everyone knows Verizon for. On the other end of the spectrum, where we see the one rock, it would be not to use any kind of targeting and not to even address Verizon in their advertising. Let's find that golden middle ground. Let's keep in the factor of the situation that Sprint has to use Paul in their advertising. Rather than having Paul bash on Verizon in the commercials or use the little catchphrase at the end that everyone knows was a stab at Verizon, they could have left the fact that he's doing the commercials for Sprint rather than Verizon do all the talking. People would have noticed this, and they probably would have gotten more buzz and organic advertising through it. Now let's look at the other concept, Kant's categorical imperative. In one of the websites that I had mentioned earlier, they brought in the example that if you target people using attack ads in your competition, then you should be ready for the same thing to happen to you. The irony now is that Sprint is acting like they made this huge power move, but they should be ready for Verizon to retaliate through the same medium of advertising. So, through this concept, Sprint is saying that it is right for them to launch these attack ads, and therefore they believe everyone is right in doing this to their competition. Now let's apply this to real-life PR. As advertising, marketing, and public relations are all closely related fields, chances are, someday, all of us will be involved in a decision regarding advertising or marketing. Keeping the golden mean in mind, we should analyze how we advertise by finding the happy medium. Selling what you need to sell while keeping a good name for yourself and not tearing down your competition is crucial to the golden mean. And it also makes you look better as a business or organization. Another example of using this concept in public relations would be to, in communication with your publics, find the happy medium of telling them what they need to know and not telling them what isn't certain yet to throw off the news or freak them out. With the categorical imperative in mind, we should make decisions with the thought that when you make such decisions, they will be marked as universal law. We all know that this isn't true. If you do something, you could always change your ways, but with this kind of thinking, it really helps you in decision making. So, if you make an advertisement, you should think that you are opening the door to all other companies to make the similar advertisements. Or as a public relations professional, if you start keeping truths from your publics about what your organization is doing, then you are making a universal law for yourself to keep doing that, and you'll end up down a rabbit hole that will only leave you looking untrustworthy. Stepping away from the ethical concepts and viewing this case plain and simple, it just doesn't look good on Sprint to be using their competitor's old spokesperson. Whether ethical or not, it does not shine a positive light on their organization and makes them look childish and attacking. Thank you so much for tuning in to my presentation. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and relaxing Easter break.